The same client of his calls election, and he says nothing. And the Bar Association says nothing.
That is my point. How
Okay.
we expect to have change in Dominica when the very persons who can hold them accountable not doing so? Who is
It's a
gonna
real
hold them?
problem. I ran the Dominica Conservation Association. We started whaling and whale watching in Dominica. We're very active during the first UWP government and very anti them. When ROSIE got killed, I'm
Something
suspicious of everything of Babylon. I think bad sex makes bad people. I'm serious. I've never seen a picture of him in 20 years by the river.
I've seen him on a yacht.
No, that's exactly the
I'm
opposite.
trying to help him out.
You can try and help him out all you want. You leading this country, dude, and you take your children to be born out here, you should have quit. How can the Bar Association allow the court to be cordoned off from the public?
What's good, my people? It's about Mr. Lix, and we're definitely back again for another podcast on this year. Brbptv. Be real, be positive television. We always aim to be real, and we always aim to be positive, hoping for a positive outcome in, of course, the podcast that we tend to do. And we are yet again with another special guest, Mr. Henry Shillingford. Bro, how you doing, bro?
I'm great, man, and welcome to your audience. I see that you're just blowing up from your other analysis where you analyze work with such a unique and vibrant way. So I'm here for this vibrancy and try to like share some of that energy with your audience. So we hope we can do it here tonight.
Of course, man. Of course. That's something that I really like.
Because there's much to talk about.
Oh, there's so much to talk about, bro. So much to talk about. But I just really want to know, it's been a while since you've been in Portsmouth. And, you know, what has been your take arriving in Portsmouth? Of course, we know Portsmouth is about bright and creamy right now. But what has been your take being back in Portsmouth after a while?
Well, it's, you know, I just, you know, Portsmouth is in a depressed state from what I know it. And, you know, I used to live up north, you know, back around 15 years ago in the heights of Ross and so on. So there's a dramatic difference. But, you know, it's reflected throughout Dominica. And there is a kind of malaise all over the world that there is this sense of doom, which you represent the opposite of. Because there's the bright and there's always the shadow. Yeah. There's the light and the dark. And so this representing, but you know, as we go to the optimism, we must always see the shadow. You know, it can't be pure light.
But why is the shadow?
You know, if it was a pure light, you wouldn't see anything.
Well, that's true. But why is the shadow so relevant? Why do you think it's so relevant, though?
Why is the shadow relevant? I used to test my children on that. Like, what's more, when you saw a coconut tree on the beach, what's more important, the coconut tree or the shadow?
Well, it depends on how bright or how hot it is on that day, isn't it?
Well, if you're seeing the shadow more on side, but the point is, that's a good point. Not only will it give you shade, but the fact is that if there was no shadow, you wouldn't see anything. Shadows is what makes everything seen. Otherwise, it'd be just pure light. And so, knowing the shadow, knowing the dark matter, right, is what's happening. Like your face, like artists draw by shadows. They draw the shadow.
Dimensions.
And the shadow brings out the light. And our faces are really different because of the shadow of the forms it makes. And so in that sense, and Dominica then, you know, and we can look at it like that, there's the shadow and the light. You can concentrate on the shadow and the gloom, if you will, on that sense, or like you, to be more positive about this and represent it as your name on your television show. And that's very important because of this malaise. And so we can also see Dominica, it's because we're here and your issues are about Dominica. And so you could see Dominica, you know, as this malaise, the shadow, and the light is the big world because that's where it's happening.
So do you think Dominica has more? Do you think Dominica has more shadows than light, though? What are your thoughts on that?
No, well, remember a shadow and a light in this metaphorical context. Different from different things. So most people would think that Dominica is the shadow economically, and the big places, even the bigger places, the bigger islands like St. Lucia and Antigua and Martinique are more the light, because everything is a comparison, right? So, and then when you look at the big world, you know, Dominica is this little place of 70,000 people with with now industry, etc. So they would be the real shadow of the big light of the, you know, the United States and France, etc. Right? Bright light. So what's more important? But what's more important?
What's more important? Interesting question. What's more
the shadow,
important?
I would say, is more important.
But if you consider the bigger countries to have more light and the smaller countries that are doing not so brightly to be the shadows, then the basis on what's more important would reside on them in certain fashions, no?
No, but because we're using it metaphorically. What I'm saying is that
but you have to understand the metaphor.
Yeah, the metaphor is that the metaphor that people are in Dominica, the Malays in Dominica, the like you say in Portsmouth, the depression, like how Portsmouth is much more depressed, because that was your point.
So that's a shadow.
It's a shadow in that sense when you're making those analogies.
Yeah.
And so you take the bigger analogy, just like Portsmouth is depressed in the rest of Dominica, the Caribbean, then Dominica would be seen as depressed compared to other places, because it doesn't have all of this economic activity, because economic activity is the light in that comparison.
So the aim here metaphorically should be that we should aim for the light.
Yes, but you know what I'm saying is that why I'm using it like that is that you can think being that, but look at the light in that sense. Like there's a lot of shadows in there that you don't want, right? And that's why maybe you're here. So what I'm saying is that the Malays, you think of Dominica because you're making that comparison on that economic level. But on other levels, you know, it's the light. You understand?
Yeah.
So I was making that comparison to say how you now and this show represents this optimism, and I hope that's what.
I get you.
So like in other words, the comparison is like nature is the shadow, right, and built stuff is the light in contemporary society. So it's better to have big cars and big buildings, etc., instead of big trees.
That's still subjective, though.
Yes, but I'm saying relatively to the world, most of the world has decided that that's better. Wouldn't you say?
So you're saying it changes based off what the world thinks it should be then?
Right. No, what I'm saying is that in this context, in that sense, you know, embrace the shadow, if you will. That nature that everybody has rejected. Right? Because that's what you have. You have much more nature. You have great air, great water. You can go hiking. You know, you can't do that if you're in Paris or New York. Right? So that's what you have. So I'm saying to embrace the shadow because the shadow is important, because without that, then you have nothing to compare that to.
Well, so I'm guessing you're pretty much talking about the yin and the yang of the situation.
Precisely.
Okay. But there's also the neutral element.
No, it's the balance. The neutral is the balance. Right?
Yeah.
Because you can never be totally neutral. Some of that and some of that, and then everything is
So you're saying balance is important?
Balance is everything. But relevant to the Dominica comparison, I'm saying we must embrace this nature and see how wonderful that is. All of this looked down upon us like they think that's part. If you embrace where you are and what you have just in life and in your context, and I think that's what's, you know, necessary in Dominica. You know, so to do that. So I'm just saying in our beginning of our conversation.
I get you. For the audience who don't know, right there, of course, Mr. Henry Shillingford is an attorney at law. And it's very interesting that, I don't know if the comparison of your religion to an attorney at law, your religion, can you tell me?
What is my religion?
Is it Rastafarianism?
Well, first of all, I don't agree that there's any word called Rastafarianism.
Isms, yeah.
And I've never, you know, I am of Rastafari, but I've never seen it as a religion. Right? It's a way of life, and it's a way of being a man. And so that's what. So it's never been an issue, although clearly the movement has been an issue, especially in Dominica. Yeah. Which, you know, is a really unique thing, and that's what I get back to embracing Dominica, because what I've found here is that Dominica has a lot of unique elements, but it's unique in that shadowy way, where it's not, you know, as bright. For example, you know, Dominica is the only place where they had a law against having your hair like this. Yeah. You know what I mean? I don't know if your camera's got it.
Yeah, you got it. Yeah.
So, and that was the only place that has ever been done. You know? And that gets back to how could that have been done? How could a parliament have passed a law
To limit your own physical freedom.
To make the citizens. You couldn't kill slaves because they were property.
Yeah.
The owner may beat them to death or something, but if you killed his slave, that you couldn't do that. It was property damage. So how did that happen? And that's the only, now Dominica has the fact that it has free Africans coming to Dominica, right, before colonialism.
Yeah.
The only place in the entire transatlantic slavery. You know, so those are unique elements of Dominica, cultural elements, that are important, but are not, you know, they're like the shadows. People don't want to herald them because that's not a good thing.
But why do you think that is, though?
Because it is a good thing, because it shows the rebel nature that Dominica was a place.
The shadows.
The shadows. The rebel. The dark forest, right, where the Kalinago.
Yeah.
Very important. I was just coming up here. I didn't notice that. The Kalinago, very important, like Massacre. They had this great painting that Earl had done of the true, you know why Massacre is named Massacre?
The massacre, they were taking people's lives then.
It's a very important story. Again, a unique part of Dominican history. Warner, which Warner is named for, Chief Warner, right, which goes back to the Mawa story. Because to tell history, if you want, this will be a history lesson, and I think that's good. Yeah. That I hope the Dominican audience realize that here was the whole of Dominica was Kalinago territory, and it was the last colonized island in the Caribbean. Yeah. And they had less than 100 years of slavery, right? It was colonized in 1763. And that's because in 1615 or 20 or so, they had the Treaty of Aix-Chapelle, which granted Dominica its freedom to the Kalinago, and all the Europeans signed off on it. Right? The French, the Dutch, the English, and they all agreed that Dominica would be with the Kalinago. And so in that agreement, the governor, to seal the deal, the English governor, right, took the chief's daughter as his woman and had a child with her. And he was stationed in St. Kitts because he was the Leeward Island governor, which was Dominica. And that child grew up with him as a proper English gentleman, riding horses and everything, and doing all the things that thing. And then, and excelling. And then the man died. And his brothers weren't having it. So they sent him back to Dominica. And he became Chief Warner. Became chief of, because he was the chief's grandson. So
in Warner area, that's where he settled?
That's the whole way, Massacre and all of that. That was Chief Warner. Well, anyway, the story is those white guys, they came back some years to say hi. You know, blah, blah, blah. Supposedly, brought him on the boat, you know, got him drunk, you know, killed him and massacred the Indians and things. And so, you know, that's a movie, that Chief Warner's life. And I see they changed the painting. They made it some nice Carib scene of la-di-da, la-di-da.
Oh, yeah.
With like a nice English boat coming in. Like, what do you want?
Trying to lessen the impact of what actually took place.
No, but that's what I'm saying. I'm talking about we have to be proud of that history. We have to be proud, you know, that look at what we were so unique. That's what these guys had to do.
It's interesting that you say we have to be proud. What do you mean by being proud? Are we proud of knowing that people taking people's lives there? What exactly are we?
We're proud that we, right, had a Carib chief, right, who was able to know both levels. And he was honest. He went back to, you know, he trusted his half-brothers, okay? And so it's the uniqueness of us. You know what I mean? It's not about being proud to be massacred. But it's that you need to be proud of how unique you were. You know, and that gets back to the Maoris. Because how did that happen? How did free Africans come here? Because they were escaping from Martinique. By 1680, 1688, right? And coming, there's no Maoris in Martinique, and no Maoris in Guadeloupe, because the Jardin could chase you there. They couldn't chase you to Dominica.
Why? Because it was mountainous?
It's a free country. It's a free country. They had a treaty. There's a Carib territory. They couldn't go there. Right? So you had Maoris coming here. When the English took their first census, they already had 300 Maroons, Maoris in Dominica. You know, so Dominica has this proud history of being rebel, and it goes back to the Dread Act, because you have these, you know, dreadlocks emerging to take back the land and to go back to the land, which is what Dominica has to do. There's no way Dominica can do anything unless it goes back to the land. This idea that we can be anything else is a joke.
It's interesting that you mentioned the Dread Act and what took place back then, because from what I heard, it was that you had a set of people, you know, living in the mountains, and they were kidnapping people and all sorts of things, and as a result of that, they started putting down the Dread Act. Was that the case?
Not at all. Not at all. It was young men between like 16 to 25, whose fathers were more or less laborers on estates, from like people like my family used to make $2 a day. I saw it. I came back here in 75. The Dread Act was passed in 74. I came back dread. No, I had to cut my dreads actually to come back because I was still 17. My mother wouldn't buy me a ticket because she would be sending me to jail.
Yeah.
So actually this crop of dreads has been grown since then. I cut it and I just came home and I started growing it again. But that was during the Dread Act.
Yeah. So why was the Dread Act enacted?
The Dread Act was enacted because young men who couldn't get employment, etc., who would normally have to work like their fathers for 2 days said, we're going to conquer land. And they went.
So there was some squabble happening?
Huh?
There was some sort of...
No, well, yes. It was the time of the 60s and man was getting conscious. There was an air. There was an air. Totally different than now. There's a whole rebel air, and man was changing it. That's why Dominica is the place where you can be. It was a lot different before. You couldn't look priest in the eye, and, you know, it was a real...
You couldn't look priest in the eye?
You couldn't. How do you mean? No. It was a real, you know, a Catholic place, real under manners. And so these youths said, no, we're not having it. And they went up and conquered land, maybe abandoned parts of estates, you know? And what made it a big thing is that a tourist got shot in 74, 75, during Carnival. And they blamed it on one of the Dreads, who happened to be a bourgeois, you know, Desmond Trotter. Right, who was the intellectual behind the book. He used to print a newspaper and also be about, remember there was a whole black power struggle happening at the same time. So it was that movement, that era, and so them now, yes, certain man certainly stole food from people because they couldn't make it, you know, initially, but by and large, that story had spread, and people, that's how they got the name. People were dread by seeing these guys grow their hair.
But what about the story about kidnapping, though? Was there a story about...
There was one story about kidnapping, which had to do with Lennox Honeychurch's father, Ted Honeychurch, and that was in retaliation for 2 youths who were named Hobwa and Douche, who was 17 and 16, who lived at Gommier, which was across the street. That's the back road to Girardel, where you go from the gas station, right? And Ted Honeychurch was across the road from there. His mother and father and them used to make garden up there. And they were young youths that were dread. And police came and shot them there and dragged them down and threw them in the back of a pickup. Remember, under this Dread Act, 21 youths got killed. And nobody has ever apologized. Right? Nobody has, it's not an issue in the history. They taught it like you. And that's, you know, one of the things about the Mawa story that I want to think, and it's in fact relevant to a legal case that I'm doing now that we may want to touch upon. But so it was that movement, right? And that was about, it was called Nom Tir. It wasn't even Rasta. It was Nom Tir, man of the land. It's the concept that Rasta came in after, right? By actually a former Dominican who was a soldier in Trinidad, who went on a move during the Federated Times, you know, and went into Jamaica and on a thing and was turned Rasta by in the hills.
I really, as you say in that day, how did it enter into Dominica?
By him, through the federal palm and the boats that used to come, right? Had Jamaican ganja came on those boats too, right? That's how ganja initially came into Dominica. That was when there was the Federated States, when we were trying to create one. So we had 3 boats, Federal Palm, Federal Maple, and something else. But it was like little cruise ships that used to travel through the Caribbean, and you could go from island to island. It was where we should be a long time ago. But so that's how, so that conscious of the black power, that was when Ron Green, Bernard Wilshire, Para, all of them had come back from school and had come back to Dominica, you know, before independence. You understand? And so there was a whole, you know, I just can say there's an air in the thing. It was, you know, the Vietnam War, things in the 60s had come off in the 70s. And so it was that revolutionary movement of youths going in the hills and growing the hair long and and then the Rasta consciousness came at that almost simultaneously by the
but do
late 70s.
you think the Rasta consciousness was as a result of being rebellious to the system that seemed to have been trying to keep them down?
Absolutely. That's how it emerged in Jamaica. But in Jamaica it was both an urban and a rural thing. Here it was specifically rural. And so even Dominica is unique in Rasta tradition, because Dominica is probably the only place in the world, the globe now, that you have the way of life coming before the theocratic consciousness. In Jamaica it was the theology of Haile Selassie. You know, because that's the 2 elements of Rasta is natural, because there's just 2 sides. They're natural, and you cite Haile Selassie because it's natural too. But
the interesting thing, as you bridge Haile Selassie with naturality, I fully agree on the basis of naturality when it comes down to the Rastafarian understanding, the ital vibrations. You need that in your life, you know, going back to Mother Nature and utilizing the soil and these kind of things. I think that's the foundation of what Dominica should actually be. My disagreement now is understanding the history of Haile Selassie and relating it to Rastafari. For example, one of the things that we have been hearing, that Rasta do not eat meat. But the precepts of what Selassie believe is totally contrary to not eating meat. His very coronation had meat galore on his table. So that's very interesting. So sometimes I tend to wonder, where do they get the philosophy that they are preaching? In fact, certain Rastas believe different things from other Rastas that are completely contrary to each other.
Well,
so it seems like there's a breakdown in that sect right there.
No, I don't think it's once you have such a universal consciousness that's trying to be universal for everybody, then you'll have those disparities. But there must be a core, and those 2 cores, somebody that's been doing this for 50 years, is the core. So there are a lot of dreadlocks. But the principle of Haile Selassie, because we're Rastafari, that was his name.
Rastafari. His family name was Tafari.
No, his personal name. They don't have family names
for the
in
kings.
Ethiopia. So you're named after your father's first name. His father's name was Makanen, and he was named Tafari. So technically he grew
King
up as...
Tafari.
No, he grew up as Lidge Tafari Makanen. And then, you know, these are merit. These are things that then he became the Jezmatch, which is the keeper of the door. And then you can become Ras. And then he became king.
But what does Ras mean?
Well, Ras means you could equate it to a general as well as a prince.
A king.
No, it's not a king. It's more like a royal knight. It's different than thing in European feudalism, what we know. But it's a merit. You wear a lion's mane, right? You are a head, right? It's a prince, but it's a prince of honor and a prince of merit. So you have to be from royalty, from the royal line, but not every royal person becomes a Ras. But everybody.
So can you name me someone who was a Ras who was not royal?
No, but there's royals that weren't Rasas.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Okay.
Ethiopian.
Because I remember when I was having this argument with one of the folks I know, he's also deeply rooted in the Rastafari understanding, And I was doing my research, and he was telling me something that's what the Ras means, and Tafari was like a family, kind of thing right there.
His personal name. He was named Tafari when he was born, just like everybody gets a name when they were born, and his name was Tafari. It means creator. And like Rasta, they call it his head. It's a head of something. It's a head of a unit. It could be an army. It could be a region.
But couldn't it also mean king, though?
No, because king is a separate thing. Rastas become kings. Kings are higher. Kings actually have governorates that they have control, territory that they have control over. Rastas aren't so much like that. They have men that they're controlling, but not territory. They act on behalf of kings.
So the meaning of Ras is head then?
Yes, that's why it's head creator, what they call Tafari. And then when he was coronated, his name Haile Selassie. But getting back to your point about having meat and so on at his table and Rastafari not dealing in meat. Now, remember now, we're talking about differences as we talked earlier, the opposites of things, right?
Yeah.
Now, and at the same time, the similarities, but still have to be opposite. The point of Haile Selassie is that he's natural. Just like that's natural. He's a natural being.
But animals are natural as well, ain't it?
Yes, but you see, what that I can understand how people go there, right, and look for things. But on the principle is that it's natural, and he's a natural man, right? Now, even things like eating meat, etc., right, are not something that you would. Well, it would be totally inconsistent with Rastafari as this principle, right? But it is not something that should lead to condemnation, because the overarching principle of Rastafari is that you're a righteous man in how you deal with people, that you're honest and so on. So that's the credibility. You understand? So the point of Haile Selassie is that he's a natural person, and the connection to Africa and to Ethiopia and to that line, so that we as natural people won't be disconnected. So the greatest problem with people is to be disconnected, like they don't have family life or they're not part of community, etc. But when you can be connected to something that goes back in the argument to the beginning of time, right? Because that's what Ethiopia represents, right? So that you're connected, and this as a man of your time. And then when you look at his life, it was he's a man that he went through all those stages as you talked about. Then he became King of Kings in 1930, right? At a time when the whole world was in decay. And those have also prophetic things when you look at the astrological signs and so on. But besides all that mysticism that Rasta talk about, what I like to talk about is his life, of what he did. That he's the only African country to initially join the League of Nations. How he he received the orb. His father received the orb and the thing that they had stolen from Magdala. So we don't need to go into that history. But if one just has to look at his life, it's an exemplary life for a leader. I mean, his speech at the United Nations in 1963, I would recommend to everybody. And he has tremendous accolades. He was the first leader of the world to speak to the whole world at once when he spoke from Geneva in 1936. Before, people spoke at Geneva, the League of Nations, but they were always ambassadors, heads of state, heads of countries didn't do that. He spoke, and it was broadcast worldwide. My mother heard it on the radio in 1936. She told me so. She was an educated woman, she was a teacher, and she was aware of that. So, and then he's the only one to do it twice, when he did it in 1963. Again, that's the famous speech about war that Bob made. That's just one little part of it. I recommend that speech to any student to read. It's a seminal work. And so just you look at how he brought Ethiopia into the modernity, if you will, right?
But the modernity, what does that mean?
Well, modern times.
Modern time, okay.
I mean, all the things that Ethiopia was literally a society, it's the same as 1,000. Well in its time, but not competitive. Now, Ethiopia is probably the most developed country in Africa. you know, even more so than South Africa in many ways. So His Majesty, and when you can see the power that Rastafari has, not in 100 years of existence, that it has put on the planet. Bob Marley is clearly the most famous musician in the world. He has gone past Beatles and Elvis and all of them. And so, you know, taking the conversation, so that Rastafari element, right, came into the nature, the consciousness, just like in Jamaica, because actually the first proponent of it, although he was from Kingston and originally had been into the United States, been a Garveyite, right, and came back to Jamaica. His name was Leonard P. Howell, right? He was also a man that was gifted with his hands, and he used to have a spring, like where he, you know, he's lived in, well, he made his name in Kingston later. He was actually from St. Thomas. So that's the element of that, bringing both together and starting again, if you will, because clearly the society, right, has needs to be remade. You can see that it cannot continue. Not the society in Dominica, but global society. It's not working.
Yeah, because I think the reason for that is because man has moved away from the creator as well as nature in itself.
And that's what Rastafari is about. Right? But Rastafari is about seeing man, right? That's the big problem that people have, like Haile Selassie, seeing man as God, right? And that's the problem. Now, it's not saying, you know, it's complicated because we're caught into thinking that God is some guy in the sky with, you know, with strings, with like some puppeteer, right?
I think that's only in cartoons, but
no, but people know. People remember. People based on base things and on philosophies. On a lot of levels, you can't get the idea of Adam and Eve out of people's head, you know, and the creation thing. I mean, people that has been so embedded by this colonialist structure.
But
that's a lot of what Rasta's trying to reconstruct.
Yeah, but how do you reconstruct something that you cannot deny?
What you cannot deny?
For example, you mentioned Adam and Eve. Yeah. The very founding. I mean, if you look, your parents had parents and parents, their parents, and so forth, going back to that unit. But how then can you how can you deny that Adam and Eve story?
No, because I could say the Dogon story, which has 4 twins. So 8 people emerging at the same time.
But there's no lineage to that, though.
Who says? Who says that? You mean because the Bible said from this begat that?
Who is the lineage from them? Even Selassie has the lineage back to Solomon, and Solomon has the lineage back to Adam through Moses. So how can we deny Adam and Eve on the basis of actually having the lineage with the Dolson, whatever you just said?
Right. So what I'm saying is that the idea is something that is hard to take out of people because it's something must have started at the beginning, and so it makes sense to be a man and a woman, and you know. So that's what I'm saying. But that's necessarily not how it happened.
How did it happen then?
Well, what I'm saying is that's up for grabs. There's different creation theories.
You see the problem?
No, but
it's up for grabs because it's not known. But you have the genealogy. One thing is to deny the genealogy and then actually replace it with something that actually makes sense. But you deny the genealogy. I'm not saying you specifically. I'm just thinking of it on a wider scope. To deny the genealogy and then look for something that yourself cannot prove doesn't deny the genealogy.
Yeah, so you're saying that genealogy you're talking about, the genealogy in Genesis, which says Adam begat Seth, and so on, and Seth begat and back Methuselah, and so right?
Yeah.
Okay, now, so how do you explain the part where Abel kills Cain kills Abel, and Cain
that's
goes
very
out
simple.
and meets his
But that's very simple.
Okay.
The Bible spoke about Cain and Abel as the basis of the firstborn, the firstborn and the secondborn, and the sacrifices that they actually have to give. Does that mean there was nobody there?
Well,
does that mean that no other children were born in that time? Does that mean it was only 4 of them that stayed there when God told them to be fruitful and multiply? So the argument is still not.
No, but I'm not. What I'm saying is up for grabs. I'm saying I give the universe, right, its power, right, And to me, it's unimportant in a fundamental sense. Because what I'm saying is that we are man. We are that thing, right? And so it's to look to the essence of that thing, right? And no matter what you say, to be able to envision God, right? It's within you. It's something that's within you.
But it's the image of.
Well, so then if it's the image of,
It
then
must be
it's,
of something.
yes, but then that of, in order, so if you're just going to be an image, to live out the image, right, because you are the image, you say, then you have to look in the image, and you're saying that's, and so that's what we're saying. So it's in that image. All we have is here. Some say man is a statue. Some say man is nature, right? Some say man is a spirit, right? Who says all these things?
Man.
Man.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying, the very abilities of to imagine beauty and wonder and grace and all of these things happening at the same time means that that is within you, that consciousness. And so God consciousness is being able to be in touch with that reality all the time.
That's a good point. To be in touch with that reality,
Right.
that God consciousness.
Right.
But then when you have that God consciousness, to what are you connected to?
To consciousness.
So wouldn't that
And consciousness is
be
love, beauty, aestheticism, balance, everything that is graceful and wonderful to you and to humanity. Is what else could it be?
Well, I
Else
mean,
do
it
you
will have
need
to
it
be.
to be?
It have to be outside of that.
What do you mean? Why?
Because for you to have love, you to have a number of things. Most people that can say it's chemical reactions.
No, I don't know about it. It could be.
It
It's
could
all
be.
of that. No, but it's all of that all the time. It's chemical.
Yeah, but that is like it's kind of like having you see the tree. You see the tree, you see the characteristics of the tree, but then you forget that there's a seed. You also forget where did the seed come from.
Right. Yeah.
So you were talking about the characteristics of the tree, but you're not looking back to where the seed and what created the seed.
No, I'm only looking not only at the seed, but the soil that the seed is, and the animals and the insects in that soil, because the soil is a living thing. If you're going to get
Energy.
that deep to me, then we're all vibration. We're all really just sound, right? And so, if you will, in the beginning there was the word, right?
Spoken word.
No, it was the sound.
So what was the sound?
I believe it was laughter. Ha 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 ha.
Why
And
do you believe it's
everything.
laughter?
Because joy and laughing is glory.
So
The joy of laughter is really godly too. Again, another element of all of those things. But pure laughter and pure joy.
But you're proving my point.
Well, I may be, but I'm not even disagreeing with you.
You're proving my point.
I'm
So
not-
it seems
I'm
like
not
just like the characteristics of the tree that you see, it came from something.
Yeah.
And therefore we see the joy, we see the laughter, we get to vision, we get sad, we laugh. It seems like that came from something to be able to have these things. Therefore the God element that you speak of, it seems like that is where it came from, because we are the image of.
Yes, so okay, so if it came from that, what difference would it make to you to know that it came from that, or as opposed to finding it in you?
Well, when you find
What different-
something
in you, right?
Well, when you find
you have to
something-
look at it outside of you.
Yeah, because sometimes to know the connection, just like when you plug in a socket, you have to know where the electricity comes. The electricity doesn't come from the wall, It comes from...
Yeah.
Exactly. So you get in the electricity there. That is who we are. That's what we see at present. But electricity comes from somewhere. That same vibration that you speak on. If I agree with you on the basis of vibrations, because vibrations can heal. The frequency of different things can literally heal your body.
Yeah, well, it's fundamentally, if you're getting into very deep space now, we can go in that.
Trust
discussion,
me.
because that's string theory. That's string theory and understanding. Then that gets to the argument: is that are things strings? Are they vibrations or are they particles? Because that's what the CERN reactor is doing in Switzerland. Because that's the difference. White people basically believe things are particles, so they're linear. They think there's a beginning and an end.
I think they got that from Africa, though.
No,
Africans
think they're just different ways of looking at it. But I would say this way is the better way. For me, for this culture, that is the vibration. That things are vibrations, and that things are vibration, and they really vibrate and
quickly or slowly.
And depending on the density of vibration is what creates particles.
Yeah, like we see in this table in front of us, it's vibration as well.
Vibration, all of it is. So, and it's the density of the vibration and the makeup of the vibration, and then it goes back to what you're talking about, chemicals, and we can get on that biological thing. But that's going very deep. Saying that can be seen on the Rasta level, on a normal level, by seeing nature, and then seeing nature as being what it's about, but justifying it is seeing that nature, right, is really, because nature's not outside of us, we are nature. And that gets back to the argument that because I try to connect life totally, my professional life, and that's conscious life. So this nature is represented by the natural man, who we're saying is God. Now, why is he God and then everybody else is not God, right? Now, let me just, you went there. Let me just finish the idea and then we'll get back. Because he's the King of Kings and Lords of Lords of Ethiopia, which is the most ancient space.
Who are you talking about?
Ethiopia.
But who?
Haile Selassie.
Okay.
He's the King of Kings and Lords of Lords, right, of Ethiopia, right? That goes back, as you say, to Solomon, but even beyond Solomon, to even before Egypt, because Egypt traces their history. Right? Moses' wife was an Ethiopian. Okay? So that is what now connects us to that anciency as black people. Right? So he represents that anciency of being, that genealogy you talked about. You know, as a representing living personal example of that. Right? And then he lives this exemplary life. You know, has children, leads a thing, starts to organize African unity, you know, really lives an exemplary life at a high manner as a leader of a country, which you don't see, the kind of quality.
I mean, he's the king, so he's supposed to.
Yeah, but there's King Charles who doesn't live anywhere near exemplary life. So King Juan Carlos of Spain, there's lots of white kings that don't live any exemplary life.
As you mentioned,
in fact, they live disgusting and nasty lives.
As you mentioned that day, I remember seeing a picture of, I think it was Queen Elizabeth and her husband, and they bowed.
Yes, because why? Because the Ethiopian throne is the oldest Christian throne, right? Because then Ethiopia also goes back as the beginning of Christianity, as the oldest
the
church.
very ending of Judaism and the beginning of Christianity.
Right, and as you said, Judaism comes from Moses.
Yeah.
Moses, remember, was an Egyptian who was just a cousin of the Ethiopians, right, who married an Ethiopian. Right? So even in their own Bible, it comes from that. And then you look at Muslims, you know, without Bilal, the Ethiopian, assisting Muhammad would have dead long time. In fact, brought him to Ethiopia to galvanize himself with the king's assistance and allowed them to allow even
I was gonna touch
Islam
on. I was gonna touch on.
continue.
But that's a whole other.
Right. So we won't go there. So, but I'm just telling you, just to get back to this idea of Rasta, because I didn't want to go as deep as you went, but you went there. But on that level, so the naturality has to do with the natural being.
And with the natural element of the Rastafaris, I agree that 100%. Especially when I tend to do my research, I realize that certain things can literally heal. But interesting enough, in this day and age, we don't look towards the natural element. We look to chemicals. We look to other things.
Well, that's what we were talking about before, about being the shadow. That looks like it's the better thing. That's what the shiny things, you know? And so the point of why we are here, because geography is everything too. You understand? I mean, white people are white because they're born in the snow and in the ice.
But they're black though.
Yeah, no.
Well, not black, they're brown.
The point is no, but the point is that they don't have pigmentation. And
the
black
pigmentation
people are
is
black
lacking,
because of the sun, and Chinese people are Mongolians are that because of the steep, the Mongolian steep that blows the wind.
The wind,
The point is that it's a geographic reality.
But we are just the same race though.
Right. So therefore, also you bring it down is that you're born, you could be from Somalia, right? But you were born in Dominica. So geography is important because that's where you were born.
Yeah.
Right? So getting to this, we are born in this natural space, which in the global context we see doesn't seem to be all that important, but we have to give it its value because we were born here for that reason. Right? Somebody was born in New York maybe to make a lot of money and to be a great banker. And so that is why our purpose is seeing our humanity, right, in everywhere we are. And the point about being natural is a very important point and an issue that I'd like to bring to your audience, and if we could get it back to a live issue, is that I've challenged the constitutionality of the laws against marijuana. Against cannabis, I should say. Marijuana is actually not a correct word. Cannabis. I filed this since 2014 and pleading closed in 2021. And the judge took 2 years to decide, and I lost.
Why?
Well, I lost because, that's why I bring it to your audience, because she missed the argument totally. In fact, she ruled on something I never argued. So it allows me to argue afresh at the Court of Appeals. But without divulging too much, it's that thing. And I want to bring it to you and to your audience. Does the principle of my argument is, if you will, a principle and jurisprudential. It's not like hard law.
Yeah.
It has a lot of hard law to support it.
But simple logic
The
then.
simple logic is that parliaments do not have rights to make laws over natural occurring phenomena, and especially plants.
Yeah.
Because you are a plant. You eat plants, you wear plants, and you live in plants. Humans did from almost all their existence.
Yeah.
And so, therefore, you and plants are inseparable. You cannot be a human without plants were here. Dinosaurs ate plants. So plants were here before everybody.
Yeah.
Right? So does Parliament, as a body of men making laws, have the right to make a law about plants or, if you will, naturally occurring phenomena? Now, it had to do with plants, and that's what makes it. But it's a very important argument as we become more and more unnatural. You know?
Yeah.
So what do you think now? It's amazing that almost in my general surveys, people get it right away, whether they're smokers or not. But it's not so obvious, right, on a legal basis. Because white people have actually made constitutions and laws that actually, with their hubris and their audacity, like they can make people property, under their laws.
I think that's a very
that
important
they can
point,
now, and now they can make plants, naturally occurring things, be something that they
illegal.
have jurisprudence over. They have legislative power.
Yeah.
This is a very important thing for us to address white people about.
No, I agree.
And so we've reached to that. Well, you're saying that, but we want this case, and I'm happy because I get to argue it anew to the Court of Appeal.
Yeah.
Now, it's also helpful that the guy that I'm representing is not a very wealthy, Rasta man, and we need money for the appeal. So I don't know how we can maybe, have some contribution.
Yeah. Well, if the people want, I can definitely link them to you if you.
Because it would be, the thing is that everybody would benefit, and it's really a human point. And I'm saying that it breaches the Constitution. Because it breaches my right to life. Yeah. Because my right to life is inextricably bound to plants.
Yeah. No,
okay.
No, I let me just make it clear that I agree with you on the basis that God gave man dominion over the plants, the birds, everything. The problem with humanity is then them trying to impose certain restrictions on man on what they can and can't use when it comes down to the natural element. No, I want to play the devil's advocate in that regard right there.
Okay. All right.
Because you said you want to have an argument in that regard, right?
A discussion.
So, okay, a discussion. Now, on the basis of utilizing certain plants, we can see that there's also different effects from certain plants. Utilizing these plants, can be good or bad. For example, cocaine is made from plants.
coca plant.
The coca plant. So restricting certain activities involved in this, in this, use of certain products might be a benefit to humanity versus against them. For example, they say don't use cocaine while you're pregnant. That's a good thing or a bad thing?
No, what I am saying is that...
No, I understand what you're saying, but I'm just asking if it's a good thing.
I'm not answering that question. Because I'm not dealing with cocaine. I'm not dealing with cocaine.
No, I'm just using the same precision right there.
No, you're not. Because the point of it here, Mr. Licks, is that I'm saying you can't, if I have a coca plant, you can't tell me not to eat it or not to use it.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Is that
the transformation of something else, they tell you can't do that.
Yes. If the man's mechanization, okay, the example I use as, Parliament can't tell me how much cane juice to make or tell me anything about cane juice. But if it's rum, they have, in my argument, they would have a right over it. So they couldn't tell me what I can do with my coca plant in terms of using it in its natural state. But once man's mind is not applied to it, and it's there as nature, God, whatever thing, because I'm not sure, I don't know, people have misconstrued the word dominion. You may have dominion over your children. That don't mean you do whatever you can to them.
That's true.
So having dominion over the earth doesn't mean you can do everything over it.
And that's where the laws come in to prevent
well, that's, I'm saying, no, I'm saying part of that dominion is like with the child about, no, without the law, I'm saying you yourself as a human being respects the idea of your offspring, and man didn't kill their children or beat their children, I mean, they wanted their children to continue.
Yeah, but that's some people though, not everyone.
No, I'm saying in the man coming in, we couldn't have become human in a human community if men didn't do that.
Yeah.
It's because of this madness of capitalism and white society that we have all this madness about children and growing up. It's this mad colonial European thinking that has destroyed us.
I think that was in Africa a long time before the Europeans came.
What's that?
Like the correcting of children, this kind of things.
Yeah, but correcting of children, no. I'm talking about bad, doing things bad, that the law would have to intervene. You're talking about treating children in a way that the law would have to intervene.
Yeah.
No, I'm not talking about that. Yes, you can correct children, of course. That includes a slap or a beating. I don't know. It's like all animals. No, don't do that. I mean, it's the problem that we have, but I think we're getting astray.
No, we are actually on it though.
Okay, because the point is, the point I'm making to you is that it's very important. It's a naturally occurring thing.
Yeah.
And so, yes. So now you get my point about cane juice and rum.
Definitely. But my argument here is the same thing, just like we mentioned. You pretty much helped me prove my point.
Okay.
Because remember, you talk about the children, right? Certain laws are set up to prevent you from doing certain things to children. It's your offspring, obviously. You should have the full right to do whatever you want with the children. It's your offspring. The same thing can be applied for the plants.
What's that?
Where they restrict you from doing certain things so you do not harm yourself in the process.
Yes, but again, I'm saying that, if you will, that's not a natural... The reason that law came into being, right? And I shudder to compare laws against child abuse and so on, which is what you'd be referring to, to compare it to laws against plants.
But why should it be different though? Because plants also have feelings as well though.
Yeah, you can go that deep. Plants have feelings.
Exactly.
So, right. So then,
and listen, I'm just playing the devil.
No, I understand. But plants' feelings in terms of that particular plant is very beneficial on a lot of levels.
Yeah.
We've learned. Now, when Rasta started to hail this plant, now it has proven that Rasta's point, and this case is part of that, and cannabis is proving that. And it's the not help them fix it, shows you how the European mind is so warped because they've suppressed this plant to advance a lot of technologies that have been extremely detrimental, like the medical.
I agree.
In
100% I agree.
That's how it happened.
That's how pharma came into.
That's how pharma came into being. So it's by suppressing naturality to invoke the thing, and that represented. So the point about ganja being legal, like I said, you cannot make rule. You cannot tell me like they're trying to do how much orange tree to have. Who says you can tell me how much plants I can, how many seeds I can have then? Like, it's insane to the idea of human beings thinking they can have a law to stop naturally. How are you going to stop a plant? There are hundreds of poisonous plants. Make laws against them? No. You teach people. And if people aren't stupid, people don't eat those poisonous plants. They don't deal with it. They're not stupid. You know, no, people generally, collectively, they are becoming made stupid by media, etc., but left people alone. People will organize themselves. Look what happened after hurricane and disaster. People organize themselves. People don't need this kind of government that they talk about.
I agree. It
right?
seems like government has done more damage than anything before.
They steal and take advantage. They're the elites.
Taxes.
They're the elites putting people in place to extricate money from the public and then give it to them. So, you know, so that point goes to that larger point of the whole societal makeup. The idea that you could do that, and you actually did it and criminalized it and damaged a lot of people for using a plant. Now, why we say they did that, and what this argument tries to expose, right, is that they were now preventing a whole new industry, because you can actually create a civilization around this plant, just like they created a civilization around oil. Because this can create clothes, it can do food, you know, it can, now they can make buildings from it by mashing up its fiber and making hempcrete, which is better than concrete. You understand? And so the plant is a magnificent plant. And when Rasta was defending nature by defending this plant. They went to jail, they took the most blows, but they turned it into an economic product also. They created a whole culture around it. You know, reggae is about ganja, Rasta's about ganja. So this idea...
Reggae is about ganja, or it's part of it?
No,
to me, reggae is about consciousness.
It's about consciousness, but then ganja is about consciousness, because ganja is a way of, I mean, all artists, I mean, use it. Ganja opens up the chakras, you know, for those that it chemically works for. It doesn't work chemically for everybody, I agree.
I was going to ask
No, because, but it does work for those people, and and it's the creative element of it that it has mostly been used for. It has been used for the medicinal elements, etc., but it's predominantly used as a creative force.
But even with the use of marijuana, I agree the plant. I think the plant should be used all over the place, you know, for different things. My only issue is with the smoking of it. Because there is one thing where you have the natural element, where you put in the natural element into your body. It's also when you put in the poison into your body for smoke, because smoke is carbon monoxide, and smoke kind of removes oxygen in the body. So
it's amazing. Do you know that it's amazing, right? It's how ganja's. Do you know how ganja, even though, right, it's smoke and has that element, why does it say it's good for asthma?
What, the smoking of ganja?
Yeah. How, if you give your idea of it?
No, as you say that, no, I could be wrong in that regard right there. But I think when it comes down to asthma, there's water in the lungs.
What it does, and what asthma is there's feathers on the side of your lungs that kind of like bounce around. Well, it's more like, it really looks like feathers, right? And it creates air movement in your lungs. When they become limp, right? It stops the air. You're breathing, but the air isn't moving in your lungs so that it can spread, right? The ganja now is, like smoking is the only way to get it to there,
But
right?
you can use water vapor as well.
Well, they're working on things, but I'm telling you what has, and it excites those things, and they start to get excited again, right?
But isn't that the air as well?
It's the air as well, but everything is
mixed
air.
with the chemicals of the marijuana that is enlightening, not necessarily the smoke.
Well,
Because if water can also do the same thing, then therefore it's not necessarily the smoke that is doing that, but the chemicals within.
No.
You're
bringing it in a form of gas, smoke.
Yeah.
So it can enter your lungs. That's what I'm talking. Yes, there's steam pipes
Water
that you
vapor,
can
yeah.
use a water vapor pipe. What I'm saying is that those things are emerging. It's still burning, right? People drink the tea with it. You can cook with it. You know, not everybody.
The reason why I'm saying this is because I think there's a healthier way to do it.
Well, there's
And
ways of you
bypass
can
the
eat
smoking.
it. Yes, but you know, people might say, but some people like to smoke. I think that you have to allow people. I don't think, you know, you could get into people's way like that. If people want to smoke, they should be able to smoke.
But do you think it's the smoking of it itself, or is the chemical that it releases? Because there's a THC.
Of course.
So I don't think it's the smoking though, because people wouldn't just breathe in smoke on its own. If you like smoking,
No,
you
of
would
course.
breathe in smoking on it. So it has
But
to
of
be-
course, you're smoking a cigarette too. When you smoke that,
because it releases the chemicals inside it.
of the tobacco.
Yeah.
Of the tobacco. And, you know, it has become, like smoking has become traditionally in different societies of a social thing that you do in, you know, cultural ritual
Cigars.
elements. You know, so I agree with you. There's certainly a more healthy ways of inducing marijuana, in cannabis. The point, and I think that you know, that's the point you want to bring to your audience, and say here, and it sounds, well, you're in agreement. We'd like to get you a poll on your audience, that it's an agricultural product.
Yeah, it is.
That it's an agricultural product, and that we have to just deal with it like that. And you know, again, what my point is, and what, remember, Rasta's always called it herb, right? Because it's just an herb. It's the king of the herbs because it has the most chemicals in it. By the way, burning is a way of releasing.
Marijuana has the most
Cannabis has the most chemicals per plant. That's another
chemicals.
one of my arguments. Is
I was
that
going to ask you about CMOS.
No, well, Thing has the most. There's 456 different chemicals. By far, the most in any plant.
Okay.
That's the other point I was making in my argument, is that it's in the Drugs Prevention and Misuse Act, right? My argument is it's not a drug. It's a plant.
Yeah.
And drugs are, in fact, right, compositions of chemicals from different elements brought together to make something. It comes from the word droog, which is an old Dutch word, which was meaning a mixing of herbs. It was never one thing. It was always a mixing.
It seems like that's exactly what the big pharma is doing.
What they're doing, and that's what that act is about. Remember, and I'll get to thing. The act now is really an act for doctors, because everything in the schedule is poisonous.
Yeah.
It's chemicals that they have to prescribe in the right amounts. So the act is really for doctors, because you can prescribe things in the act.
Yeah.
That's why ganja, they're trying to still keep it like that. Its first inroad into the law was to allow it to be prescribed.
Prescribed, yeah.
So it's still in the act, but now they allow you to prescribe it.
But that shouldn't be.
Well, that's my point. It's again, I have to keep saying that it's not
It's
thing.
the
It's the
plant.
white hero way of looking at things. Like they have a right to say something about this. What I argue,
But how did we end up in that predicament though?
by colonialism and slavery and being warped into and never changing, never making ourselves, our independence in all these places we were just little shadows of what Europeans were. So we're little Europeans and never being ourselves. And that's a lot of what Rastafari is about. Let's be ourselves. Let's look to our own God. Let's look to our own culture, our own things that marvel us. If we have nature...
You said Rastafari says look to your own God though.
Yes.
But wasn't Selassie a Christian?
Yeah.
So you see...
So I'm a Buddhist too. I am about Buddha. The point is that...
So wait. So you're saying that Rastafari is about having your own linkage with whichever God you
No,
want
no,
to follow?
No, Rastafari.
Because,
no.
I mean, if you look...
You're going in God and religion and that, and I
No,
told you
I'm
that
trying- because
Rastafari is a
follow-
way of life.
I
It's
follow
not-
the precepts of Selassie. And Selassie said, Christ. So when Rastas say that they follow, you just mentioned Buddhists and this kind of things, can you really truly say that you're a Rastafari? Because Rastafari leads the way to Christ. I mean, he was with the...
I don't agree
assemblies.
that Rastafari leads the way to Christ.
He said,
I don't know.
He himself said a man without Christ is like a sheep without a rudder, you know.
Yes, so the principles of Christ. Christ was the shepherd, right? Christ was the lowly man, right? The common man, a fisherman that came, and he came at the time, right, to preach and this love and, you know, that element of thing, and it came into being by the universe because white people needed that.
Well,
they would have been mad killers.
That's why I disagree with you.
Well, you can.
Because remember, you said a while ago, Ethiopia is the oldest Christian nation.
Yes.
If it's the oldest Christian nation, it wasn't white man that brought that to Ethiopia, you know.
No. I said Christendom, right, has been brought to has become this power and onto thing to bring some semblance of culture to white people. That's what I'm saying, right?
So you say they use what the Ethiopians and those before them use for them to create some sort of powers for themselves?
No, you're trying to make a distinction in your argument. I don't know, about Haile Selassie saying he's, Christ, and somehow saying, how can I now look to Haile Selassie if he's looking to Christ?
And then say you're Buddhist. I find that...
I'm not saying I'm Buddhist. I'm saying I'm Buddhist, I'm Islamic. I am the globe. I'm not following. I'm not a religion. I'm a way of life. And if you're saying that this man is God, then he's God of Islam too, those Islamic people. I don't believe that there's separate, all these entities. It's one consciousness, and it's different rivers flowing to one sea. Okay? Now, I'm just saying from my principles, seeing nature and naturality as the thing, it sits well with me to understand that it's Haile Selassie and to also fit it in Christ, because Christ was the humble fisherman who came with the stories. He didn't have no wife. He didn't have no children. He was with his boys hanging out. So he could be great, and he could do that. He could turn over tables and temples and tell people...
Miracles.
Well, whatever, tricks, whatever. Right?
Well, I don't think bringing back people from the dead is a trick,
Well,
though.
how you bring back people from the dead is, people say they can be born again, and what is dead and what is not
Well,
dead.
I think that is a spiritual thing.
Well, the whole
It
point...
still boils back to energy
The whole
and vibration.
point is that it's a sense of magic and supernatural things that you can take it that way. I see everything as natural. Okay, so I see those, whatever it is. It doesn't... Christ's teaching is much more important than his tricks.
Here's a question for you. Why is there a spark at birth?
A spark.
A bright light.
Is there?
Yeah.
Right, for
so what exactly is happening there?
I don't know about it, so I've never thought about it, but
So
clearly
isn't that
there's a spark.
something that is supernatural that is taking place?
No, because if it's taking place, it's a natural phenomenon.
Yeah, but there's a spark with us. There's a spark at birth.
How do you know that?
Because we see it.
I don't see it.
I can go on YouTube and show you.
Well, YouTube, I don't know if I trust something of YouTube, but
The
point is that...
there is a scientifically proven phenomenon, as you mentioned.
Well, I'm allowing people, or if you will, I don't think everybody has the thing. I am saying that I am looking at everything as natural, right? That's not man-made.
But can you fully
there's
look at
no
something
supernatural.
natural?
There's
and
nothing
just leave it as
supernatural.
that? So you don't think there's any supernatural element in the natural?
Okay, this is a thing, and if you want to think about this philosophy, right? And it says so in the book of Thomas, right, which is the scriptures that were not part of the Bible.
Yeah, the history books.
Well, it's not a history book. No, it's from Thomas.
It's not part of the Ethiopian Bible?
I'm not sure, but it's found it's from the Dag Hammarskjöld library, which was similar to the Dead Sea Scrolls. Anyway, Christ speaks there. You lost my train of thought. But Christ speaks there about he being come in the fire that has come to set the world on fire, right? And he's watching it, right? Christ, as I was saying, was somebody who was a rebel right? That he was rebellious. He had to
Rebellion
shake
against
up
the
the world,
system,
right? And I'm saying that the world now has come to the thing where it's clear it needs a king, right? And if you go back further, you understand on natural human civilization, they're always organized around a king, right? And then there's a king of kings. That's how humanity organizes. In other words, you know, there's New Age people who disagree, but the man is the king in his household. If you're in a job, the boss is the king. That's how
has been from the very...
That's how humans organize themselves. It's the idea of Kudman, right? Kudman. Kudman, Dominica. That's a fundamental principle of humanity, right? 5 people can do more in one day, every time, than one person can do in 5 days.
You sure about that?
100% physics.
Well,
5 people do,
confusion
not sometimes. That's the point of having a king. That's the point.
A leader, yeah.
You have to, well, that's the point. You have to direct that energy. 5 people can do more. That's why nothing is done by one person. Everything that's been created in this human has been done by human beings cooperating. And so that is the idea of the King of Kings and of man. So that is not, you know, it is, you know, there's all kind of supernatural or magical things, right? And tricks, if you say that people who are in touch with those things can make happen, right? There's people who have done those sort of things of Christ that's known in the Buddhist and the Tibetan traditions, right? Because it's the way of manipulating the forces, right? That we're all around. Because, like, between us, there's nothing called nothing. There's all kind of energy, what they call space. But that's, again, a deep thing. I'm just trying to keep it on the level that people normally talk. And so Christ now, right, if you will, has come back or is now in the kingly character. That personage now, for us to realize who we are as black people, is not the humble guy that with his boys and so on and so on. No, we now have to be kings.
So everybody has to be king.
Yes, we have to live up like what it is to be a king.
But how
It's like you have to be, you know, what we look at when Mr. a king, or when this iconic, what is called an archetype of the king, is the benevolent man who can take care of his empire and his household, and who's fair and partitions the goods well, and then he gets high respect and so on, and then, you know.
But that simply means that everybody can be king.
Huh? No, they're king of their own.
For example, you mentioned your 5 individuals.
Yeah.
You said there has to be a leader.
Yes.
Because if everybody's a king, everybody wants to do whatever
But then
they
the
want.
next day, the next guy's the leader because it's on his land. So the 5 guys go the next day.
So it switches.
Well, it's not switching. You don't. It's not like that. We have to have constants. You know. So you're the king of your house. If you're running your business, you're the king of your business.
Yeah.
Right. So what I'm saying that it just needs organization. There needs direction to energy.
So
otherwise,
there's levels
energy.
then.
There's always levels. That's why they're king of kings.
Okay.
Everything is a broccoli. You know. Everything is just a small of the other. But it's not totally mechanistic. Because nothing is just like what Newton thinks. You know, so you can just, once you have it at the model level, you can just make it as big as thing. Because everything, once you keep everything relatively the same, that is proven that's not. That's the theory of relativity of Einstein. No, at a certain point, it's relative.
But it still has its basis, though.
Huh?
It still has its basis.
What's Selassie's basis?
It still has its basis.
Oh, it has its basis.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that works at a certain level. Like, you know, there's all kind of theories about that. So I, at this point, I, for myself, and I'm recommending that because all you can do, and I'll argue it, is that we have to see the king in ourselves more and more so that we can be this noble character who's just and sincere and honest and with integrity and, you know, those things that you think about when you think about a king. And that's the whole point of His Majesty on that personal level. And then he's justified because he's sitting on this throne that's in Africa, in Ethiopia, which has this history. And then you look at his personal life and how he lived, And that's almost magic. If all those things are true, wow. You know, right, what Christ said in that same book, he said, it's a marvel, right, if spirit made man. But it's a marvel of marvels if man made spirit.
The whole can man make spirit?
By thought, by energy.
But doesn't the man die and spirit remain?
Well, I'm not sure about death. There's energy, so the energy cannot die. So if man created energy, energy continues.
But that's the spiritual realm.
Well, that's you're saying, but where did that spiritual realm come from? It came from man. And
But
it came from that
from man when man dies?
Yes, but you just agreed that I said it was energy, right?
And I agree.
And then that energy does not die, right?
That's correct.
It just gets
But
transferred.
man dies.
Right, but the energy he created does not die.
But what if the energy that creates him?
Well, I mean, again, I can say that I made man because I made man.
Yeah.
I made 7
Your
children.
sons, yeah.
So you could say I made man. So that energy, that same consciousness we spoke earlier, which you are, right? Manifest, right? Consciousness manifest, right? And so that consciousness manifests, and through all those other manifestations of consciousness brought you into being because of the love that between your mother and father. And that's what makes better people, because I think bad sex makes bad people. I'm serious. And good sex makes sexy people.
But it's just sex. So
No.
I thought it's how you raise bad people, or you lack
No,
something.
it's both, but everything begins at the seed, the source. Yeah, man. That's why there's so much bad children out there. That's why them bad children out there. All them bad sex and bad sex.
With them. That's crazy. But with
I'm serious. Think about it, dude. Think about it. All this bad sex going around. Sex without love and shit.
Sex without love, I guess that creates an environment.
Creates
it
an
doesn't
energy.
necessarily be
No, it creates an energy. I'm saying we create this energy. This is the element, and that's where people get devil.
Do you think we create the energy or we manipulate the energy?
We both. Because that's how we create it, and then you manipulate. Do you know?
But how do you create the energy?
By thought.
But how do you?
Thought comes from consciousness.
But isn't
And we're
thought
all
just
consciousness?
Isn't thought possibly something just chemical?
Yeah, but
because you can literally switch. Mankind has been playing with man's brain and are able to manipulate.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That you can white science is able to look at the finite thing of the human being, because all these chemical things.
No, that's not white science. Yeah, that actually came from history. I'm going all the way back to Africa because that's where they learned
everything
from.
comes from there. I mean,
Yeah,
one will argue that that's what the Egyptians, and there's, if you want to go all the way back into this.
So why you keep saying white science when they learned it from them?
No, because it's how they use it. It's their linear approach to it, and it's clear that I think that on all levels, right, when we look at it holistically, the European approach to science and linear, right, although it has some initial benefits, it's like, wow, the longevity of it has always been in question, and we're seeing it right now.
That's true.
Because it's not based on natural systems and cannot rejuvenate itself, cannot recycle itself.
Yeah.
And so it's like they say they're smarter than everybody else because look what we've done. So now, although they just Johnny come lately, they can say, well, you were here for thousands of years, you're still living naturally and so on. Well, we did it for thousands of years. What have you done, dude? Right? You're just a couple, 100 years and you've now, destroying the whole deal.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm talking about in terms of looking at the approach, the philosophy, going back to Dominica, and that being proud of being in this natural space that's untouched by that stuff. Let's love that. Let's see what that can do for us. So I have this whole theory about the big idea of why can't we be this icon in the world that represents naturality and show that we can live in a system, right, that is naturally based, and be that example in the United Nations of this one place, that is living this out. And it's amazing because we can do it given our population and the thing. We need to, you know, I have ways to do that, but there's a serious thing that why can't, because the world needs that. In this madness, they need this oasis.
So was that one of the reasons why you became a lawyer?
No, I became a lawyer because I really thought, I could fight for people's Rasta rights and human rights and everything. And then I got involved in international environmental law by coming to Dominica. And I came back to Dominica because by the time I finished law school, I had 3 children. And
bad sex or good sex?
Good sex. They're great children. One went Miss Dominica.
Yeah, that's true. Big up Let's Last at one time.
Right? And so, and as you know them, you know, Dana is an engineer now in California.
Yeah.
But I came back here, and it just seemed that what was I doing? This natural, wonderful spot, and I was Rasta. And so after doing my government, you know, thing, I went into the Dominica Conservation Association and tried to apply my legal knowledge to that. And that ended up being a lot of environmental treaties. And we were very dynamic with DCA, myself, and AFI. You know, we were the most dynamic environmental organization in the Caribbean.
Yeah.
AFI was head of the Caribbean Conservation Association. I ran the Dominica Conservation Association. We started whaling and whale watching in Dominica.
Okay.
I ran camps for 5 years, sleepaway camps. I mean, there's children that still come to me now in their 30s remembering that. We were a serious force.
Why did that stop? Why did that stop?
Why did that stop? Because technically, we were very active during the first UWP government and very anti them because they were looking to a much more financial option and not looking at nature so much. Although we helped them, and Prevo did get through the World Heritage Site, which, by the way, is the fastest ever done in the history of World Heritage Sites. And it was the first terrestrial World Heritage Site in the Caribbean. And that's another one of the 21 singular natural and cultural accolades that this country, that I've compiled, that this country has. You know, it's the fastest ever. Faster than, you know, Machu Picchu and those other great World Heritage Sites. So they did that. So we were very active. And when the elections came up, you know, so we were very, I did the media for Rosie's thing, and Afi was Rosie Douglas, because we were bringing, because we were bringing the point that, which was the difference, labor meaning the working class, the laboring, with the environment, because the arguments against the environment that we were bourgeois, that the environment wasn't no money in it, you know, that was for rich people, that was for white people, like you don't defend it, you know? And so we were now linking with labor, the work which was actually happening internationally at the same time in 1999. When the labor organizations, the ILO, started to recognize, shit, the environment is important to our workers. And so, and you know, if you watch my thing, I think the World Trade Center happened, you know, that attack, 2001, that false flag attack happened to create war.
Yeah.
You know, and they've been at war since then, and the environment is no longer the issue.
Yeah.
They only just talk about climate change. What about water pollution? What about garbage? What about access to water? What about loss of land?
As you say that,
all they talk about is climate change.
Do you believe in climate change?
Climate change is a makeup of things. Yes, the air is affected, right? But if we were cleaning up our rivers, which you can do, right? Handling bioengineering to control hillsides and so on, to not have things. Controlling desertification, to not have land loss. If you're doing the practical things that we can do, planting trees, that we can do now with computers who can monitor wide places that physical people couldn't think before. If you're using this technology on this kind of slave way, manipulated way, for the environment, so, you know, so that's why I came back to Dominica. I thought it was the best place to grow up children. Yeah. Right? You know, and then I had, issues happened to me because of my revolutionary zeal. Right? Because we were doing this and we were taking on, you know, what was UWP at the time. Now, these guys are just like the world, you know, has gone, you know. I mean, we were very active. I've been to like 5 international whaling, you know, meetings. Been a spokesperson on behalf of NGOs at the UN. I did all of that, and what we lost it from when ROSIE got killed. Well, really, when Athi quit, because Athi then became minister under ROSIE.
Why do you say he got killed?
ROSIE?
Yeah.
Yeah, ROSIE got killed.
Why do you say that?
Because he went to the meeting of the former leaders, revolutionaries who had become leaders. Gaddafi was coming from a meeting in Libya. He passed through London. He was perfectly healthy before he left. Perfectly healthy. He was playing basketball every other morning, you know? And then he dies of a large heart. And he, you know, it's just everything that is, you know, I've seen it happen throughout the 60s, right? I'm suspicious of everything of Babylon.
Do you think the
World
same
Trade
thing happened to
Center was
K-House?
an inside job?
Yeah, well, we know that.
No, but I mean, this is something,
I mean,
no.
you could literally see it happen. So.
Yes, but what I'm saying is that they have told a falsity.
Yeah.
You're saying that this...
But just like Big Pharma is the same thing.
No, but how come there's no musicians that have ever even made a rap about that? Like, they've kept like this World Trade Center thing, which is showing how, and then this, if you want to go there, this pharmaceutical nonsense of COVID and so on, and what they did to the thing. We have allowed this thing by not defending. These guys are about taking away nature and human beings.
But it seems like humans have allowed themselves to do that. To do
White
themselves
people. It's clearly a white people problem.
I don't think it's a white people thing.
Well, that's
because
you.
if you look back
white
in the
people
history,
run the world.
No,
and they've
I don't
created
think so
everything.
either.
Well,
I don't think so either.
Then you're
because
living in an imaginary space.
No, because
what institution, not individual, what institution has existed the longest in the European, in the current thing that we know about?
Institution? You're talking about
what are you
the
thinking
Catholic
about?
Church?
The Catholic Church.
Well,
it's older than the English monarchy or whatever other institution.
But Hinduism is older than it though.
Hinduism is
older
an
than
institution.
Catholicism.
It's not an institution. We're not about Christianity. We're talking about the institution.
Okay.
We're talking about the Pope, about that was started. That's everything. The Spanish, the Portuguese, all their loot. Everything. The whole Christianity.
The ones who created the Spanish Inquisition.
The one who created the society you live in. Jesuits who started schooling. You know, the whole structure of contemporary society is built on the papacy, on popedom, with a twist when Martin Luther came in, right, with Lutheranism and what we call Protestantism. Protestants, why are they called Protestants?
Because they were protesting against the Catholic Church.
Against the Pope. Because they ruled everything. And that's when they started the Inquisition.
But that's when the Christians helped them to see.
No, but they're all Christians.
Well, that's debatable because I know history.
No, I'm not talking about
history.
you.
Okay, so let me just say this. Part of history with the Catholicism and the Christians, there were Christians before Catholicism came through, you know. It's just that the Christians were more humble individuals. They took Catholicism branch out from Christianity
but
to
what
become
I'm saying,
the force that it was.
No, but I agree. But I'm saying the Christianity that is known in the world today is Catholicism.
Well, they started calling themselves Catholicism after they started losing their members to Christianity. This is why in the great book you never see Catholic Christians, you know. You only see Christians or Nazarenes.
No, I understand that.
I understand to go back a little bit of history.
I'm not. You see, you go into a philosophical level, and I'm talking about how the world, how it exists now, what it exists now. You know, they're the ones that support it.
The Roman Catholic Church has fallen.
In people's mind, but you can't accumulate the amount of stuff going into one place for thousands of years through all this. Do you know what transfer of wealth happened to white people over slavery? Like how much wealth? And do you don't think the Catholic Church, when all the royal families were getting stuff, but they were getting and they're still there. And they still do these archaic practices.
It always mind-boggled me how they became kings and queens.
They became kings from Charlemagne was the first, who was the son of Pepin. when they were coming out of the Dark Ages. Remember, it's the Dark Ages that the Europeans came out of. The Dark Ages were the Germanic barbaric tribes.
But that's not real kings, though.
No, I'm just telling you how they got to be kings. Because remember, it was the Romans who didn't have kings, right?
Yeah.
So it was Caesar. So the hordes from the north, the barbaric, the Visigoths and the Vandals, you know, actually guys named Vandals, they were a tribe. And all the Visigoths and the Germanic tribes of the north of Europe, who were like the wild people to the Romans, they attacked Rome and they overran it, right, from around 400 a thing. And that's what led to the Dark Ages, because they destroyed everything. They were mad people. They were what we know as the white people. Now the Romans were more elevated white people because they were closer than the Greeks before them. They were closer to Egypt, and Egypt was the source of all knowledge. That's where they were learning, right? And so if you want to go back deeper, the Romans are about republics, right? So, and the things were about democracy. So that's how you have Republicans and Democrats. The Greeks about democracy. Romans brought in republicanism, right? Which is people representing your vote. So they have senators. So a senator represents 1,000 votes or 1,000 people, but it's his vote, like you have now, where you vote, you know? So we live in republics, not in democracies. I'm just telling you a fine art. I'm the lawyer here, right? That's the fine differential.
I'm thinking a lot of things that if I have to get into that, we're going to be going a whole side.
You can, but I'm just telling you, that's why they have Democrats, and that's where it comes from, right?
Okay.
So one is more Romanesque, one is Greek, right?
I thought it was an autocracy that they were doing back in the day.
Yes, but they created this, you know, Rome had senators and had that whole, yes, it was Caesar, it was a military autocracy through Caesar, they all agreed, but, you know, it was more fascism than anything, than what you know as fascism now, where everybody was, what's in the world today, where there's no democracy. You know, the industry, the military, and the executive are really one. That's fascism. That's what Hitler was. That's what but they're all. It's a fascist world. They're just not telling you that, right? But that's what they are. Where you know, they all agree. In the Western world, what they call, remember, it's called Western Europe. They're east of the United States, but they're still, because they're the west of Europe. That's the problem. Again, with the Russians. The Russians aren't Catholic. Remember, the European Union, a Catholic organization. The Treaty of Rome. Treaty of Rome created the European Union. Okay? And that's why the fight with Russia. Because they're the Slavs. Right? They were the
Slavics.
The Slavs. That's where the word slaves come from. Right? And so that's the white people fight. Now, the Slavs have actually been much more progressive. And to me, they're the better ally. Russia's a much better ally
to Africa, for sure.
To black people, you know, and this bashing of Russia and making everything Russia that's bad in America.
We know about the media.
No, but we say we know it, but why are they doing it? Why? What's the point? Why are they supporting Ukraine? That is nothing and wasting people's money. We have to get back to these deep reasons. And I'm saying, if we're going back to that and Rasta, it's all about Africa, because Africa is the source of everything. And Russia is the one that can support Africa against its intentions for Africa, which is subjugation. They know if Russia is neutralized, right, the Africans don't have an option in terms of the technology and so on that they brought to bear. So I think that's what that's about on that level. And that's, again,
it's a possibility.
Going back to the initial discussion or part of it, and that's why Rasta, right, is about Africa, because it's about the humanity. I think without Africa being free, the world can't be free. Without Africa being, you know, in that Zion state, that beneficial state, that kind of kingly state, so Africa will be the sovereign over the world, and that's clearly what would make the world better. I mean, we look at it, and Africans are really, when you look at historically in terms of fairness and you know, style and benevolence. You know, it's and it's clear.
But that culture has been lost. So
no, it's still there. It's been certainly has been infringed more and more, but it's too old and too deep for it to be lost. And that's what Rastafari is about. We have to be about this. It's in us. We all can be kings in our realm. You know, and recognize there may be kings over us, and it's all respect, right? Because it's in our realm, and we have to act kingly.
I think that's the male hierarchy. You tend to look for the best of the best to lead, and then in with all.
Well, everybody does, but remember, there's different spheres of leadership.
Yeah.
You know.
The hierarchy. That's why.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But remember that the hierarchy could be like that. It doesn't necessarily have to be in this linear.
But it still goes in it though, even if it's spiraling.
Yes, but it's spiraling in and up, in and out. That's why it's like interchanging in the Kudman thing. The point is that at some point in time, everybody recognized this guy's leader for this act. You know, it could be for the life. But what I'm saying is that just like everything in life, the point is, for me, and I think it's useful as more African, is that things are more fluid. They're not as fixed. You know?
So if you're looking at that and then you pinpoint it back to Dominica, what has gone wrong?
What has gone wrong in Dominica is that we have looked at the point in time when I was just referring to, that we should have looked right to this nature, right? And that's how this government
of the nature island of the Caribbean, though.
Yes, but you know, and it goes back to a tradition of great foresters, etc., that really acted in Dominica, and we did in the 90s, etc. We were the external element, you know, but not necessarily on the government, you know, level.
So
and
why,
we did recognize,
why is that?
Because we had somebody like Skerritt come in, right, who just did not get it. Like one of the two greatest things I have against this leader is that I've never seen a picture of him in 20 years by the river or by the sea, like a photo op.
Yeah.
You know, like how those presidents see people running, right?
Yeah.
Like I've never seen a picture of him just walking in the forest. Just take a picture of man. I'm in the nature island. Not once.
Yeah.
In 27 years,
I've seen him on a yacht.
No, that's exactly the opposite.
I'm trying to help him out.
You can try and help him out all you want. And the other element that I think is appalling on that level is that you can be a young prime minister, married in office, and not make it a public thing, sort of like have a kind of a secret wedding, right? Which is part of this next bigger problem. You have children whilst in office, and those children are not born here.
Yeah.
Now, that's worse than stealing $10 million to me, right?
I found that really, really
that's
weird.
a level of, and it really speaks to Dominica and even other politicians not point. I've never heard that pointed out like a real, you leading this country, dude, and you take your children to be born out here? You should have quit, or you should have been the day you came back. And those children should be ashamed.
Yeah.
You know?
But why then should they be ashamed when...
Whatever, they can be ashamed. They should be ashamed that their father was the prime minister of a country and he didn't think they were good. Pregnancy is not a sickness. My children were all born at home. I was born at home, and all my brothers and sisters.
Okay.
Right? Yeah. Pregnancy is not a sickness.
It's a blessing.
It's a normal part of life. You don't go to hospital. This is a recent development of people going to hospitals to have children.
But that's because of pharma.
That's because of white medicine.
Sure.
And non-natural things. It's unnatural, trying to intervene in natural processes as much as you can to show that you are in control.
But how do people rectify that if they have no clue?
Well, Rastafari is the answer. If you look at the Rastafari, you literally, I do not think that's what Rasta is about. Babylon can be fixed. So you have to go back, and it's not like we want to live in the bush all the time, but we have to go back to source and start again.
The natural element of things.
And look what has happened. So that's what we were saying 60 years ago. But now there's solar energy, and there's all kinds of ways that if you build, except that we were attacked ran our thing and we were attacked, so we weren't allowed to do that.
But is that
So
an
that-
excuse though? Because I mean,
is that
if
an
you know,
excuse?
they say if you know better, you do better. So do you
but
think
when
we don't
you're-
know better yet?
Clearly we don't know better because we're still chasing wanting to be like, for example, even in Antigua. Like when Antigua don't have what you have, and you don't have what Antigua have. To build a mile of road here is about 6 times more expensive than building a mile of road in Antigua. You know what I mean?
But that's because of policies.
No, that's because of your geography. Yes, Dominica is the most expensive place in the
mountains,
Caribbean. Most expensive place in the Caribbean to build roads. Right?
Because of the mountains.
The geography, yes. And this has blessings and things. So, so those are, so that's where we went wrong. We went wrong with having leadership, right, that didn't see that. Like, even, why on CBI programs, right, for natural development? Why just for hotels? It's foreign investment.
Yeah.
Why can't we be investing in forest preservation or, any kind of other thing?
I think because mankind has moved away from understanding the natural benefit and look towards more of a financial benefit for them.
Yes, but I mean, there's really no financial benefit except for the agents in that hustle because somebody gets the passport.
Yeah.
And you're supposed to use that money to help the
build
country.
Yeah.
Now, I have no problem with that, especially when passports are limited to 10 years. So you can say, well, 10 years, we got the money, but if you haven't come here and lived here and so on, we're not giving you another one.
Yeah.
Or there's a premium to get another one. Right? So there's ways you can use that, but like anything, if you don't have a policy, Dominica does not have a basis. Who are we? What are we? Why are we? Right? And I'm saying it's in our face.
Yeah.
We're about nature, and that's what we excel in. There is no nation state with a vote in the UN that has such concentrated natural phenomena. We have 2 lakes. 2 lakes. We have more surface water. Right?
And we haven't
even started drilling.
Yeah.
Imagine well water we may have, underground water. We have sluices.
Steam.
We don't need, not steam. While you drill and you get water, there's groundwater. We have sluice. We don't need to do that. People in Barbados got to drill to get water. They don't have sluice, right?
Because of all the volcanoes.
No, well, the volcanoes, but I mean, we have hills and the water gets seeped down into the water, into the thing. That's how you get
But
well.
there's also steam, and when the steam reaches the surface, it cools and turns into water.
Yeah, well, there's that too.
Yeah.
But those vents, all of that happens, but by and large, we still have really rainwater doing its, running, because rivers don't just run down, they run this way too.
Yeah.
So this phenomena we have, and so we haven't respected it. And
So
then
what-
you haven't
what-
had a policy. So if you had this policy that we are going to be the nature island of the world, right? And we're going to be, in my argument, in terms of economic thing, because that's what you have, is agriculture, the herb capital of the world. And then you focus, right, on growing herbs. Not just ganja, all herbs.
Yeah.
Because Dominica, you build a policy upon who you are. Who drink
agricultural
rum?
nation.
Who drink rum? A normal person in Dominica, non-bourgeois person who drink rum, right? It was not bush rum. Now bush rum is medicine,
Yeah.
right? Because the alcohol, like most medicines, were based on extracts, just like hot water extracts, or like burning herb extracts the chemicals, and that's what affects you.
Yeah.
Or burning tobacco extracts those chemicals, that what affects you. Soaking it in alcohol extracts it.
Yeah.
Now, when people get sick here, more than any other island, certainly in the Caribbean, they look for bush medicine before they look for pills. So we're based on herbs, right?
But I think that's also in the schooling system, because the schooling system teaches you, hey, the hospital is what's going to heal you.
Well, all of that, but that's what I'm saying is that it's, as a country, right, we don't like hospitals. We deal with healthcare. We prevent things.
Preventative, yeah.
Because those aren't, that isn't healthcare. Hospitals is sick care.
Yeah.
It's not healthy people, it's sick people.
Yeah, that's true.
Right? You have to get sick to go there. Right? What we want is to prevent
Yeah,
that.
preventatives.
Right? Like all of this thing we boasted, but we just do it, for a week during Creole thing, right?
But let me ask you,
That's
you're
what
a
they
lawyer.
say.
Why don't you guys come together? Because I know in the United States, lawyers tend to come together and then they try to push policies that can actually.
That's the Bar Association.
Yeah, but why doesn't Dominica do anything like that?
Because the Bar Association, the people involved in the Bar Association, like every institution in Dominica, has been taken over by negative forces. So that's why there is this lethargy, because there's no leadership.
Because one of the reasons why I always say these things, I'm trying to figure out what is the point of lawyers. Are they just there to represent people, or are they there to hold the government accountable? Because
it's a real problem. No, because this again, there's the fascism. Is everybody just supporting each other? I mean, the jurisprudence and the legal system in the Caribbean is nonsense. I mean, for example, this is something I've been saying for years, but I can't do these things.
So why don't you get a group of people to come together to try something?
Because more and more I'm Rasta, and I want the system to fall because it's sick.
I've heard a number of persons saying they want the system to fall. Why did they want the system to save the system from itself?
No, because you can't support it anymore. I did do more than the bar doesn't do anything. The bar started they should be holding lunches or dinners once a month.
Yeah.
Where there's a topic and any lawyer speaks to everyone, so you can learn how people speak and how well they can do and how they address issues. Clearly, bar association should be making, like I made the issue and I called the chief justice. What's the name again?
I have no idea.
The guy that did the chief justice that did the law review for Byron.
Byron, yeah.
Now this is ridiculous. Byron. Now the Bar Association didn't come out. Byron, who is like the most accomplished legal person in the Caribbean, most accomplished by far. Been chief justice of the International Criminal Court, chief justice of the Caribbean Court, and chief justice of the OECS Court, etc. Been dean of the school. He now is hired, in all those problems he has been hired, but he's hired by a prime minister to review election laws. And in the midst of him reviewing the election laws, the same client of his calls election, and he says nothing.
Yeah.
And the Bar Association says nothing.
That is my point.
No, but I now went and did a podcast and I lambasted
But you cannot be doing that by yourself.
Exactly.
So how do you expect to have change in Dominica when the very persons who can hold them accountable not doing so? Well,
the people is just like why the youths are rioting in Nigeria, because the whole system is just supporting its nonsense. Now, it went viral and it went thing of you had it and you played it.
Yeah.
When I broke the barrier, I threw down the barrier, right, on the boulevard.
Yeah.
Everybody, people like my children making my child think, like that was such a sensible thing to do. It had, and I've explained it to you. I'm still in court for that. The guy that was acting chief of police has charged me in court for beating him up, right? Which for incident that happened after that, right?
Yeah.
Now, that situation occurred because the police in soldiers' uniform had surrounded the registry and the courts and was preventing people from access to the court or the registry.
Yeah.
That is so appalling. That means you couldn't go register your baby because their opponents, their political opponents, had been charged with an offense and were appearing in court.
Yeah.
So what? You block off the court for 4 things. And, right, you're not allowing me as a lawyer to go to the registry to do my work. At that moment, if you look at the film and you play it back, is that I had called the registrar who wasn't there. Now, I'd called the Bar Association and, in fact, the head of the time, Mary Roberts, and told her what is going on and how can the Bar Association allow the court to be cordoned off from the public. In fact, it's not even the government's court. It's the Eastern Caribbean Court.
Yeah.
Do you know you can't be in contempt of the Court of Dominica? There's no such court. Right?
Yeah.
It's the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court that sits in Roseau and sits in Castries and sits in St. John's and sits in Basse-Terre and sits in Kingstown. Right? It's the only of its kind in the world where you have original jurisdiction from 6 different countries with a UN vote. Right? But you have a legal system, throughout the Caribbean, CARICOM, which doesn't have a law review. It doesn't have a law review. Every school, law school in the United States has a law review. Yeah. You have to review and talk about potentials that could happen and
adaptation.
And all that happens now is that Court of Appeals reviews. So only judges reviewing themselves. That's an important. Society can never grow.
Yeah, that's a breeding ground for corruption.
But more importantly, there's no growth.
Yeah.
So you have all these lawyers that have made so much money, right? And they don't start a law review. What is starting a law review?
So how do you solve that problem?
Dude, you make me king. I've made these issues, all these things I am saying, right? Why do we have, the magistrates are appointed by the government?
Yeah. So
but you have an appeal but not by the Chief Justice. That's ridiculous. It makes the magistrate a political decision.
Yep.
Right? Why haven't you made it one court? These are things I talk to them about. I'm thinking, what am I supposed to do? I'm the mad radical Rasta lawyer.
But you are literally proving my point yet again. When I had this conversation with one of the lawyers, I think the very first one when I started the podcast, and I was asking him, why aren't the lawyers coming together to do something? And then I spoke to Dr.
What was his answer?
Well, his answer was pretty much, well, that's how the system is. That's what he was giving me. That's how the system is.
No, it's not how. The system, in fact, in England, they don't know. I went to school in England. I went to University of London, right? And the system is totally different than that. In fact, to become a barrister...
But it's a different system.
No, it's totally the same thing. It's absolutely the same thing. Dominica did a little wrinkle by calling itself the Republic, so it doesn't have a Governor General, but it still named itself the Commonwealth of Dominica. Why did it? Because there's already a Republic of Dominica.
Yeah.
So that's the stupidity that we do.
Yeah.
So we made ourselves, again, a republic, but then called ourselves a Commonwealth and remained in the Commonwealth. And so these, remember, this system is made by liars, robbers, and thieves. No joke, But we're talking about the European mind who gained everything through robbing, stealing, and lying. People forget that, and they think that somehow they stopped.
Yeah.
Somehow they got religion. They're still doing this. That is what they do.
Yeah. There's always.
And they're doing that to the whole humanity now. And now they have too many people, and the agenda is clear to most people. Is just that they're afraid.
Yeah. But I think the lawyers themselves are afraid. Yeah, everybody seems to be
everybody
afraid of their
is afraid. And because, again, they don't see the king in themselves. Because also a king is fearless.
But is that an excuse, though? That's not an excuse.
Of course it's an excuse for the whole humanity.
That's just something to
How does the United States have a dead man as their president? It's not just Dominica. This is a dead man that's being drugged up every day.
But powers that be?
But who are the powers? They have allowed, the powers is a philosophy that even thinks that it's okay for one guy to have $62 billion or $100 billion. To have a guy like this South African guy who's supposed to be the smartest guy. He's talking like he's so democratic, and he's an immigrant in the United States. He's born in South Africa during apartheid. And his father was part of that system. And this is the guy that's supposed to be the most liberal, blah, 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 blah guy. They're totally blinker in people's eye.
It just seems like a whole messed up situation.
That is why you have to revert, and that's why Dominica can be the symbol.
But it's saying like you have to revert to naturality. And you might say Rastafari, I might say revert to God, and we have our personal thought process.
Yeah,
but hold on. But how do you get back to that? Because we are going in a direction. One of the things that I like to point out is objective reality. We are seeing it.
Right.
It is one thing when you're not seeing it, but it's when you see it. Just like when you speak, I speak to a number of persons.
So what are you seeing? What are you seeing?
Okay, let me give an example. When I go out there and I talk to a number of individuals of the present government that is running things, they would agree with me. Sometimes they would agree with me.
How?
Agree with me with what I say.
Which is?
Okay, we see in the system, the economy is going down, policies are not being put in place to help Dominicans. Your power reps are out there who's supposed to be doing things for you are not doing it. Yet still, they will still come back and tell me that they will vote for the very thing. So my question to you...
Vote for what very thing?
The very people who are not doing nothing for them.
Oh, you mean, right. Yeah.
So my question to you is, it is one thing when you are ignorant, but it's another thing when you have objective reality to see what is happening, and you still do the same thing. How then can we move forward?
Well, then that's something that's a nihilistic view. And maybe with that person, he doesn't have a choice.
But it's not just one person.
No, but all
it's
those
several, and I'm seeing it overseas as well.
Yes, because that is a psychological drama that is happening to people because people see no options. They become what's called nihilist. They can't see out of the trap. I'm suggesting to you that what it needs is a group of people, and maybe you should be involved because you have this energy, and media people are the most important people in the world to know because we're even educating people through this discourse.
Yeah.
And I hope people have learned something from today. You know, like for example, and part of the Constitution I'm arguing is that parliamentary sovereignty. Do you know that your Constitution in Dominica is but an act of Parliament? The English Parliament created a law that granted Dominica its freedom, and it's the schedule to the law is your Constitution. And it's so in St. Lucia, it's so in Jamaica.
Because that's what they said is your Constitution.
Because they created your Constitution. You didn't make your Constitution. They made it. Because it's the same as St. Lucia. You know, it's the same as Trinidad almost. They're almost, you know, they're cardboard cutters.
But I
so
think,
they're instruments of the English Parliament that's granting you your freedom under these conditions, which is this Constitution. Right?
But when I look at...
You understand?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
And that's fine. But in that whole time, right, none of those Caribbean countries have reviewed their constitutions and redid them.
Yeah.
You could have.
To fully on. Yeah, I agree.
And they haven't.
I agree. So how I differentiate from the Caribbean and the United States? The United States is a reflection of your will. Because remember, it's a...
Well, the thing about the United States...
It's not a democracy, you know.
No,
it's a
it has become
republic.
that. Well, it has become that. But now, why America is so famous, and I pointed out again in this legal argument, is that America was the first and only, right, to break from England, right, totally and violently. Now, what I'm saying is that even Kenya, which had the Mau Mau Wars and so on, England granted them after they lost the war. So basically, almost the Constitution and the thing was a treaty, right, under these conditions. But they refused to have somebody take their freedom. The United States was the only one to do it and create their own Constitution. So the original Constitution of Australia is an enactment by Parliament of England, as with Canada, as with India. You understand? So the hubris of the English mind is that I'm granting you this, right? And that mind is one of the problems because it continues and it goes over to, for example, what started the discussion, that I can say what plants can exist and not exist. So I am distinct from nature. Nature's out there and I'm here. Whereas we, as natural people and African people, see it as one, that we're part of nature.
But shouldn't the Constitution be based off its natural element?
What?
Because remember, nature has rules in itself too.
Yes.
So maybe that's the same thing that humans are doing to other humans as well.
No,
or you'll suffer the consequences of certain things.
Yes, you can say that, but the thing is that when you do that, right, you can, in fact, or if you want, when nature is happening, the elements in that is outside of you, what you quote in nature, I say that we're part of nature, is that they're spontaneous. You know, they act in ways that you don't have control over. That's my view.
But
you have control over
follow
man.
one rule.
Well, is it one
That's
rule?
the rule of nature.
Yeah, but that may be many rules. Like you have a section, but many subsections.
The reason why I'm saying this, for example, when mankind wants to say, okay, let's bring in stuff like homosexuality and transgender, this kind of things there, that is completely against nature in itself.
Well, that's why I would have been against that too.
Yeah, so I would understand the rules. I would say, okay, don't do these things. This is why I come back that we should abide by the rules of nature, and the Constitution should be made based off it.
Right. Well, what I'm saying is that once you go on that philosophical line, right? What you don't do is legalize unnatural. You don't have
natural habits. Yeah.
You don't have any right to say anything about that. You can't make a law over that. That's nature in its weirdness, like like how sometimes bananas will make 3 bunches.
But even going deeper than that though, because if you look at the laws of nature as well, where the weak natural selection tends to take place, the weak dies off, whereas humans has found a way to preserve the weak and these kind of things there.
Yes, but
so that self has its element rooted outside of nature too.
Yes, but no, we're talking about that thing as an element of the human being called law.
Yeah.
That means they're imposing their will.
Yeah.
And they're saying something can happen and can't happen, and if it happens, this occurs.
Yeah, I know.
That is where I'm going to.
But the reason why I'm saying this is like you understand, I'm trying to understand why are they being created. Because whereas the laws of nature will say the weak will die, in the human laws it's saying let's preserve the weak. You understand what I'm saying? So there are laws made to preserve the weak. You get what I'm saying?
No, what laws are made to preserve the weak?
For example, when they say do not kill, or there are laws for certain women, do not go to women's bathrooms, and to preserve the sanctity, so to speak, of certain environments. That's why laws are created. But if you didn't have these laws and you see the laws of nature, then people, you know what?
No, but these are very new things. I mean, people...
No, but that's what I'm saying, because there seems to have some precedence in that why that would be, not just for the laws of nature, but laws that would preserve certain...
Well, that's again, I'm going to keep going on it. That's a certain culture that's imposing those things on there, because all these other cultures never felt a need to make all these rules. Like how contracts became so big, right? Is because you can't trust their words. They couldn't trust each other.
Yeah.
So you had to write it down.
That's an adaptation. That's a smart move, isn't it?
Well, for their culture. But in a lot of other places, your word was your bond.
Yeah.
You didn't need to write it down. But it's because they lied so much, they had to hold each other to what they said.
Yeah, but with other cultures where they do not lie as much. Take, for example, you have places like Dubai's the places where if you leave your phone there, you can leave your phone there and go.
Yeah.
And you'll come back and you meet your phone there. In other cultures, if you go and you leave your... Matter of fact, if you have a phone in your hand, somebody can come and take your phone from you.
Right.
So and laws based on adaptation, though? To help based off circumstance or culture?
Yeah, true, but what I'm saying is that...
So it's not just nature in itself as I'm thinking of it?
No, what I'm saying is that that's the only thing it can do. Only thing law can do is control behavior of man.
But it just seems like man has extended their power beyond that.
I am suggesting to you that the European man has attempted, and they started even about, I mean, not just the human mind, but the human being, like in slavery, like they can actually, do that under those, and I'm not talking about slavery like in the old days, but have it as part of the legal system where you trade in it, and it's a commodity, and so. And so that's what I'm suggesting, but it really, I mean, you're making it very, and you can go there. I thought the more subtle interpretation of what I am saying is that, what about strains? What about strains? Like what they're doing now, this kind of herb that I'm not to appreciate, all of this kind of, what you're doing is you're taking varieties and breeding them out, right, and creating things, and that's done in seeds. Now, that has not been a subject of law, right? Like how you breed certain bananas or you breed certain things, okay? And where it has, but that has allowed it to become only GMOs, where you're now transcending not just the species, but you can mix insect species genes with plant species genes. So you're going beyond kingdoms. It's not just animal kingdom, but bird kingdom, mammal kingdom, and so on. And you're crossing those to create something that absolutely doesn't exist in nature. That's where they're saying,
like the Rona.
Well, yes.
Bats
but it's not. It's that the corona thing relates to that because that's called gain of function.
Yeah.
Now, what is gain of? Why would you want those things to gain a function that's already negative?
Well, they said they did it because they wanted to sort of prevent it from happening in the future, so they will be prepared for it in the future.
Okay.
Which I found that rather insane.
Right, because the whole European, you have to understand that Europeans also lived with animals for a long time, and their whole medicine is built on animals and veterinary thing. That's why they test on rats. Can you imagine? They test all their medicines on rats.
Well, I think the reason why they test it on rats because rats has a close genome to humans, and they.
What I'm talking about it to their genome, because rats come from them. Rats were brought from the Europeans. Do you know more Amerindians died not from guns and bombs, from disease? Europeans had just come off the bubonic plague, and rats were rampant all over Europe. They didn't know about hygiene. If they had not found the New World, white people may have just disappeared. I mean, it's a serious thing. I truly believe
I don't
God,
think so,
God preserved them. Well, I think so.
The
God
reason
preserved
why
them
I'm
from
saying this
giving them the New World.
The reason why I'm saying this because I think everybody
Creating people
came
like
from...
me.
Huh? You're a white person?
Well, they created my grandfather's white.
Well, exactly. So you wouldn't have born, but I'm thinking that we.
But I don't think there should be more people like me.
No, I'm just saying that.
I think migration and integration is a mistake.
Well, I think it's good.
I don't.
Because if you mix back everybody's gonna come back looking like how they were originally. You know that.
It's proving in the world, like all this integration, like what you see going on in London, or what you see going on in the United States, like migrating and pushing. Every fig belongs in its fig tree. Yes, we can have gardens of mixed, plants, but by and large, you'll find stands of bamboo will be with bamboo. So on that level, I just don't think culture is mixed. I think culture can relate to each other. Yeah, because
culture is different. But I think we are part of the same human race.
Yes.
It's just that we have different pigmentation.
We have different geographies, and therefore we have different things, and therefore create different cultures.
Yeah, but it's the same thing.
Yeah, you can appreciate, but you can't throw them together.
Why not?
Because you see what's happening.
Well, I think culture is the reason for that, not because of your skin color.
I didn't say about your skin color. The skin color, I'm not talking about skin color, I'm talking about those people that have a certain way of thinking because they come from a certain geographical background, which you had scarcity, which was about greed, which was very masculine, which was very warlike. And so because of scarcity, no, I'm talking about white people. They come from an environment that is very harsh, so that they had, to be greedy, they had to hoard, that they came from a background of scarcity. They're only comfortable in scarcity and war. They had to fight a lot, right? And so their whole consciousness evolved. That's the Diopian view, developed by Cheikh Anta Diop. They were locked behind the Ice Age for thousands and thousands of years. Yes, they're originally from Africa, because all man came from Africa. But there were also Neanderthals up there with them. There were different kinds of man.
But that's why I said the culture changed, man.
No, the geography created culture and made man differentiated. Yeah. That doesn't mean you can mix back those guys back together again. They can appreciate each other's culture.
But if the geography created the culture, wouldn't them moving back into the same geography create a...
Well, let's see it happen. I'm just saying, in that process that's happening, I just don't think it's going to work.
You have, bro. I mean, we are way over the time I wanted to do right there. But of course, I definitely have to bring you back for more vibrations in that regard right there. But you have any last words? You have like 1 minute. Any last words?
No, I'd just like to say that to tie the conversation back from where it began, is that this idea that Dominica is a backward place that doesn't have any hope. I am suggesting to you that because it is so opposite of everything that seems so luminous and so brilliant with all these inventions and machines and all of these things, that shadow, that other side, right, is actually the more important side. Because, and then when you look at the world today, everybody wants to be natural. They know that selling natural is good. They're not natural, but they're selling it. We are that. We are the integrity. And so, and you have to give that value. So it's to love nature and love being here, and then seeing that glorious you as part of that nature, not separate from it, but actually the most beautiful example of it, who can appreciate the wonder of it all together, and that's your godliness. So see that king and that queen within, and know it and live it.